The morning fog hung low over Coronado Base, clinging to the surf-worn concrete and echoing off the barracks like a lingering warning. Lieutenant Marcus Hawley adjusted the brim of his cap and squinted at the new SEAL trainee arriving at the gates. The woman stepped lightly, almost imperceptibly, but there was a presence about her that made him uneasy. She moved with purpose, each footfall precise, as though she belonged to a world few others could enter. Her dark eyes swept over the base, calculating, assessing, yet betraying nothing. Marcus had heard the rumors that this was some social experiment to integrate women into the elite SEAL program. He had tolerated bureaucrats before, but never had one sent a female trainee to his team. To him, this was more than a challenge. It was an affront to the traditions he'd sworn to uphold. Tradition had built these warriors, forged them in sweat, sand, and relentless misery. He wasn't about to watch it be compromised. Elisa Grant stepped off the transport van, her uniform crisp, hair tied back in a functional bun, and boots kicking up salt-laden dust. She gave no hint of nerves, no trace of hesitation. The older SEALs glanced sideways, whispering and nudging one another. Some wore the look of curiosity, some skepticism. But Elisa didn't seek attention. She didn't need it. She simply walked toward the assigned barracks, her movements measured, deliberate, commanding respect without speaking a word. Marcus followed at a distance, eyes narrowed. He studied her posture, her gait, the way she held her shoulders squared against the wind. She was clearly fit, but that alone didn't impress him. He needed to see the steel beneath the skin, the fire that could survive Hell Week, the grit that could endure an ambush at 0200 hours without hesitation. He doubted she had it. Most rookies crumbled in the first hour. Most women had never been tested at this level. Marcus thought he knew exactly what he was dealing with. The first interaction came during the briefing. Marcus had a reputation for intensity, and he wielded it like a weapon. He scanned the group, his voice cutting through the room like a whip. Welcome to the hardest unit in the Navy. This is not a game, not a social club. Here, we push each other to the edge. Any weakness will be exploited. Any hesitation will be fatal. When he turned toward Elisa, she met his gaze without flinching. Marcus had expected fear, or maybe submission, but found instead a quiet confidence that unsettled him. He cleared his throat. Are you prepared for this? I've been preparing for longer than you think, sir, she replied. Her voice was steady, calm, and devoid of any apology for her presence. Marcus felt a strange twinge, annoyance, maybe even a flicker of fear. Not for himself, he told himself, but for the reaction of the team. The first training exercises revealed her skill. Marcus watched as she outpaced half the men in endurance drills, carried weights heavier than most could manage, and navigated obstacle courses with uncanny precision. Yet she never boasted, never demanded attention. She simply did her work. That, perhaps more than anything, irritated Marcus. He had expected a struggle to maintain authority, but here was someone quietly undermining him with nothing but competence. During a long run along the shoreline, the surf splashing at their boots, Marcus noticed how she handled the waves. She didn't flinch, didn't stagger when the cold water lashed at her legs. Other trainees slowed, cursed, stumbled. Elisa continued, her expression serene. Marcus gritted his teeth. He felt the first prickle of unease. Not only could she survive, she thrived in conditions he considered brutal. Later, in the evening briefing, Marcus confronted her directly, trying to rattle her with words rather than force. You realize what you're stepping into, right? This isn't a parade. One mistake, and it'll cost you, or someone else, their life. Elisa didn't blink. I know exactly what I'm stepping into, Lieutenant, and I won't let anyone's mistake, including mine, cost lives. The words hit Marcus like a slap. She was calm, unwavering, and fully aware of the risks. There was no arrogance, no bravado, just a deadly certainty that unsettled him more than any failure ever could. He realized, reluctantly, that she wasn't just here to survive or to prove a point. She was here to dominate in a way he had not anticipated. By nightfall, the sun dipped behind the horizon, casting long shadows across the sand. Marcus returned to his quarters, running scenarios in his mind. He tried to reconcile his pride with the quiet brilliance he had witnessed all day. He knew she was testing him, whether she intended to or not. Every step she took, every breath measured against the surf and wind, was a challenge. He remembered something a retired SEAL once told him: the quiet ones are the most dangerous. He hadn't believed it until now. Elisa Grant wasn't loud, she wasn't brash, and she didn't demand attention, but she had presence, and presence in the SEALs was far more lethal than a shouted command. As he lay on his cot that night, listening to the distant crash of waves, Marcus felt a knot in his chest. It was not fear for himself. It was respect, grudging and reluctant. And deep down, something else he refused to name: a rising tension, a sense that this woman would change everything about his command. He didn't know it yet, but the day was only the beginning. This quiet newcomer, with her unwavering stare and impossible calm, would push every limit he had ever believed absolute. By the time he realized her true capacity, he would already be late. The base, the team, and Marcus himself were all about to be forced to reckon with a force far beyond expectation. And Elisa Grant? She simply slept, resting for tomorrow's drill, unaware of the storm her presence had already ignited, a storm that would test every man, every rule, and every ounce of pride Marcus Hiley had ever known. The alarm blared at 0200 hours, piercing the cold pre-dawn air. Sweat clung to Marcus Hale's uniform as he stumbled onto the training field, already buzzing with the low murmur of hundreds of Navy SEAL trainees. The sea wind whipped off the Pacific, salty and stinging, biting through skin and soaked cotton alike. Tonight was the beginning of Hell Week, a grueling gauntlet designed to break the unworthy and forge the elite. And Marcus, ever the traditionalist, had assumed Elisa Grant would crumble first. He was wrong. By the time Marcus arrived, Elisa was already in the surf, chest deep, shoulders squared against waves that could have swallowed a smaller man. Her movements were fluid, almost effortless, yet powerful enough to defy the water's violent push. The instructors shouted commands over the roar of the surf, expecting chaos, hesitation, panic. Instead, Elisa executed every maneuver with surgical precision, assisting a male trainee struggling against the undertow, pushing him forward without hesitation, her calm demeanor in stark contrast to the screaming chaos around her. Marcus's jaw tightened. She wasn't just keeping up, she was leading. The night only worsened. They were marched miles through sand that seemed to conspire against them, carrying weights heavier than their own bodies. Their feet sank, their lungs burned, and their muscles screamed in protest. Some trainees broke. Some vomited. Some collapsed and had to be carried off by instructors. Marcus noticed the quiet resilience of Elisa. She kept moving, never faltered, barely even breathed hard. Her endurance was remarkable, yet she never bragged, never drew attention. She simply existed as the standard. During a grueling exercise called the crawl, trainees were forced to navigate a flooded trench filled with mud and seawater, low-hanging obstacles scraping their shoulders and backs. Marcus followed, trying to intimidate, to test her limits. "Keep up, Grant," he barked. Elisa didn't respond verbally. Instead, she silently adjusted her technique, moving with a precision that made Marcus want to shake his head in disbelief. Every time a trainee fell behind or floundered, she was there, helping without a word, pulling them out of mud, guiding them through with almost preternatural timing. By the end of the crawl, half the men were gasping, trembling, barely able to stand. Elisa emerged clean, soaked, unbowed, as if the entire challenge had been nothing more than a morning jog. Marcus felt something unfamiliar stirring, respect tinged with fear. She wasn't just enduring Hell Week, she was mastering it, bending it to her will. The days bled into nights, each exercise punishing the body further. Cold water immersion, endless runs, weight drags, underwater obstacle navigation. Trainees lost fingers to frostbite, and their hands blistered beyond recognition. Yet Elisa pressed on. She helped teammates stitch wounds, offered strategic advice during mock combat exercises, and somehow maintained an unshakable calm. Marcus watched in silence, forcing himself to remain impartial, but he couldn't shake the realization. She was far more than a capable trainee. She was a phenomenon, a force disguised as a quiet woman in combat fatigues. The final test of the week, the 12-mile swim, became the defining moment. Temperatures plunged, currents became treacherous, and hypothermia was a constant threat. Marcus had expected Elisa to falter halfway, her arms cramping, her legs screaming for relief. Instead, she surged forward like a predator, muscles coiling, eyes fixed on the horizon. Several men floundered, exhausted, even panicking, but she remained a pillar of composure. When the waves knocked them off course, she corrected them, encouraged them, and pulled them along until every trainee made landfall. By the time they reached the shore, dripping, numb, and near collapse, Marcus felt something he hadn't admitted before: awe. That night, while trainees slept fitfully in the sand, Elisa did not. She ran laps along the beach, swimming again, rehearsing hand-to-hand movements, visualizing combat scenarios. Marcus observed from a distance, noting the exhaustion etched into her face, yet also the unwavering determination in her eyes. Every fiber of her being screamed discipline. He realized then that he had never encountered anyone, man or woman, with this level of focus. He began to replay memories, digging into what little he knew of her past. Afghanistan, combat medic. 6 soldiers saved in a single ambush. He had brushed the story off as background noise, but now it made sense. The calm in her gaze, the precision in her actions, the quiet command she exercised over her body and mind, it all fit. She had been forged by war itself. As dawn approached, Marcus forced himself to speak. "You're relentless." Elisa didn't look at him. She kept moving, arms pumping, legs slicing through the wet sand. "Relentless isn't enough, Lieutenant," she said quietly. "Precision and endurance are." Marcus felt a pang of something unfamiliar: humility. She had just corrected him, not in words, but in action, and she was right. Every instinct, every reflex, every calculated movement told him she was operating on a level few men could even dream of reaching. He realized that his attempts to intimidate her, to push her past her limits, had not only failed, they had revealed his own weaknesses. By the end of the week, Elisa had earned not only the quiet respect of the other trainees, but also the begrudging admiration of Marcus Hawley. But he would never admit that aloud. For him, admitting respect felt like surrender, and he was not yet ready to surrender. Still, deep in his chest, Marcus knew something essential had changed. The woman he had underestimated, the one he had assumed would falter first, had already begun to rewrite the rules of his unit. She had survived Hell Week not because of luck or brute strength or politics. She had survived because of skill, discipline, and the unyielding will to succeed. And Marcus realized, with a sinking sensation he could not dismiss, that the real trials were only beginning. He glanced at her across the beach as the sun finally rose, casting long shadows on the wet sand. She was dripping wet, exhausted beyond measure, yet standing tall, surveying the others, giving silent guidance with a glance, a subtle hand gesture, a shift in posture. She commanded attention without asking for it. Marcus understood something dangerous and exhilarating in that moment. He had not seen a rookie enter the unit. He had witnessed a warrior arrive. A warrior who would not be stopped, not by fatigue, not by hierarchy, not by tradition. He had no idea what she was truly capable of yet, but he knew it would redefine everything he believed about courage, strength, and leadership. And somewhere deep down, Marcus felt a twinge of fear, because the woman standing before him, calm, relentless, and impossible to intimidate, had just shown him that no amount of authority or anger could break her. The coming days would test him in ways he could not yet imagine, and he had a sinking feeling he might not survive the lesson unscathed. The sun had barely risen, and the sand still clung to drenched uniforms from the night's brutal drills. Marcus Hale's temper was fraying, stretched thin by exhaustion, and the gnawing fear that Alyssa Grant had somehow slipped past all his tests. He watched her from a distance, noting the way she carried herself, calm, composed, unshaken, even after another night of near-impossible endurance exercises. Every motion was precise, every breath measured, every glance steady. She wasn't just surviving. She was thriving in a crucible designed to break men. Marcus gritted his teeth. He had been trained to push until bodies cracked and minds bent, but Alyssa seemed immune. Each correction he offered was met with quiet compliance, yet her gaze held a clarity he could not shake. She did not shrink. She did not falter. It irritated him. It unsettled him. And on that day, with the sun glaring down and the sweat stinging his eyes, Marcus reached his breaking point. The team had been running drills for hours. Obstacle courses, timed swimming, simulated hostage rescues. The men were exhausted, voices hoarse, legs trembling, yet Alyssa remained a step ahead, guiding others through exercises they would have failed without her subtle interventions. Marcus had attempted to single her out earlier, testing her limits, trying to assert authority. Each time, she met his challenge with calm defiance, not disrespect, but a refusal to yield. It happened during the final simulation of the day. Marcus had designed a tactical assessment, a mock ambush, with trainees navigating a narrow corridor while dodging simulated gunfire and timed explosions. Marcus had expected chaos. Instead, Alyssa directed the team with quiet authority, moving fluidly, anticipating threats, rescuing teammates with precision he could not have orchestrated himself. He couldn't tolerate it any longer. "Grant!" he barked, stepping forward, his face flushed with anger. "Stop maneuvering like a hero and start following orders." Alyssa froze, turning slowly, her calm expression unwavering. "Lieutenant, I am following the mission parameters. The team is moving efficiently. No lives are at risk." Marcus felt a surge of frustration, the culmination of days of exhaustion, bruised pride, and fear. "I don't care. You are overstepping. You are not in command." His voice cracked like a whip, and without thinking, without pause, he swung his fist. The motion was swift, a sharp contact across her jaw. Time seemed to halt. The field went silent. Even the wind over the beach seemed to still in horror. Trainees froze mid-motion. The instructors stopped their notes. Alyssa staggered slightly from the impact, but did not collapse. Her hand flew to her jaw, fingers trembling, yet her eyes never left Marcus. Shock rippled through Marcus, not for her, but for himself. He had struck a seal, a fully capable warrior, a peer in training. And the realization hit him like cold steel. He had just crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. Alyssa's voice was quiet but firm, cutting through the stunned silence. "Lieutenant, this behavior is unacceptable. I will report this incident." Marcus's chest tightened. Panic, shame, and a strange sense of dread welled up in him. He tried to speak, tried to apologize, but the words lodged in his throat. She turned, calm, collected, and walked toward the other trainees, adjusting her stance as if the strike had been a minor inconvenience. The silence of the beach echoed the enormity of the moment. Later, in the barracks, Marcus paced, replaying the incident in his mind. He had expected resistance, but not this. Not her composure. Not her ability to stand, bloodied and defiant, without a flicker of fear. He thought of the stories in her record. Combat medic in Afghanistan, saving 6 soldiers in a single ambush, surviving gunfire, improvised explosions, and life-threatening injuries. And yet, here she was, enduring a hit he had delivered in blind rage, and she remained unbroken. The investigation began almost immediately. Marcus was suspended pending review, his reputation in jeopardy. Elisa, true to form, refused to let the incident derail her focus. She continued training discreetly, her eyes on the exercises, her body pushing past exhaustion, even as bureaucrats and lawyers swarmed the base. While the brass debated protocols and punishments, she prepared silently, methodically, refusing to let any setback diminish her skills. Marcus, reading through her service records in isolation, felt a creeping unease he could not shake. He learned of her rescue missions, her battlefield ingenuity, the precision with which she had navigated situations far more lethal than anything he had witnessed at Coronado. He realized, with growing horror, that striking her had not intimidated her. It had only revealed his own weakness, his inability to command someone who did not fear him. Nightmares came in waves. Marcus saw the moment replayed endlessly. The snap of his fist, the tilt of her head, the unwavering calm in her eyes. The entire base seemed to mock him with silence. He had expected submission. He had expected fear. Instead, he had encountered a force entirely beyond his comprehension. Meanwhile, Elisa moved like a ghost through the shadows, practicing drills in secret, preparing for tests she had already anticipated. Her focus was absolute. Nothing from that day had distracted her from the mission. Marcus watched from a distance, his frustration tempered by admiration he would never admit. She was a warrior beyond measure, shaped by experiences he could only begin to imagine. The day closed with a quiet tension neither could escape. Trainees whispered, the older SEALs exchanged glances, and Marcus sat alone, wrestling with the weight of what he had done. He had underestimated her in every conceivable way, misjudged her from the very first moment, and struck a woman who had faced far greater horrors than any drill could replicate. And yet, he knew with certainty, this was only the beginning. Elisa Grant's calm strength, her unflinching discipline, her unassailable courage, these were forces he could neither intimidate nor command. He had seen only a fraction of her capacity. Every rule, every tradition he had relied on, every tactic he had ever used to assert dominance over trainees, would soon be tested by someone far beyond ordinary limits. As night fell over Coronado Base, Elisa rested briefly, eyes scanning the horizon, her jaw sore but her determination intact. Marcus lay awake, staring at the ceiling, haunted by the echoes of his own failure, unsure if he had seen the full measure of her power, or if he ever could. The silence between them was not mere absence of sound. It was a tension, thick and electric, a quiet prelude to the storm that was coming. Marcus had struck, but he had not broken her. And in that truth lay the most terrifying realization of all. Elisa Grant had already begun to rewrite the rules of the SEALs. He had only just begun to understand it. The morning sun cut through the windows of the base office like a blade, illuminating the sterile gray walls and polished floors. Lieutenant Marcus Hawley sat behind a polished oak desk, the weight of the previous night pressing down on him. His uniform felt tight, constricting not just across his chest, but across his very identity. For decades, Marcus had been the embodiment of discipline and authority, a man whose word commanded obedience. And now he was being questioned, scrutinized, judged. By striking Alyssa Grant, he had crossed the line, and the Navy would not let it pass silently. He reviewed the formal report again, though he had memorized it line by line. Alyssa had filed a concise, unembellished statement. Lieutenant Hawley struck me during a training exercise without justification. I request that the matter be reviewed according to Navy regulations. There was no anger in her words, no demand for revenge. Just fact, precision, discipline, the same qualities that had made her the first woman to complete EAL trials at Coronado Base. Marcus felt a shiver of shame. She had not merely survived his strike. She had framed it in a way that magnified his failure and preserved her own integrity. The internal affairs officers arrived promptly, their expressions unreadable, their notepads ready to capture every detail. Marcus attempted to justify the situation, fumbling explanations about stress, training intensity, and misjudged authority. Each sentence felt weaker than the last. The officers were patient but unyielding, methodical in peeling back layers of excuses he could not defend. Every attempt to rationalize the incident only highlighted the gravity of his lapse. Alyssa's report hung over him like a shadow he could not outrun. Meanwhile, Alyssa moved through the day with the same calm determination she had shown during Hell Week. The investigation meant little to her. Her focus was on training, on staying ahead of every challenge. Late at night, she practiced hand-to-hand combat drills and endurance exercises in the dim light of the barracks. Every motion fluid, precise, unbroken. No one saw her, yet every instructor who caught a glimpse could not help but whisper about her resilience. She had not allowed the incident to deter her, nor had she allowed the scrutiny to slow her pace. Word of the incident spread quietly among the other trainees and instructors. Some expressed sympathy for Marcus, seeing a veteran pushed too far by exhaustion and frustration. Others quietly acknowledged Alyssa's unflinching composure, noting that she had turned what could have been a humiliation into a demonstration of professionalism. Her reputation grew not from what she had suffered, but from how she had endured. She was no longer just a trainee. She was a benchmark, a standard against which everyone else measured themselves. Marcus, isolated in his quarters, began to read Alyssa's service record in full. Combat medic in Afghanistan. Multiple engagements under heavy fire. 6 confirmed rescues during a single ambush. Improvised explosive devices navigated with surgical precision. Every entry painted a picture of a woman shaped by war, disciplined beyond measure, unflinching in the face of danger. For the first time, Marcus realized that the person he had struck was not merely a trainee or a woman testing the limits of her abilities. She was a battle-hardened professional who had already faced far more peril than he could imagine. Night after night, Marcus replayed the scene in his mind. He saw the strike, the calm defiance in her eyes, the way she had continued as though nothing had happened. The memory tormented him not because she had suffered, but because he had been the one to fail, to misjudge, to overstep, to strike someone who commanded respect he had yet to earn. He was haunted not by fear of punishment, but by the stark realization that Alyssa Grant was a force beyond his authority, beyond his understanding, and entirely beyond his control. The Navy's legal and administrative processes were methodical. Depositions were scheduled. Interviews were conducted. Marcus answered questions with a careful blend of honesty and defensiveness, but he could feel the scrutiny tightening around him. Alyssa's testimony, when requested, was concise, controlled, and unemotional. She presented the facts without embellishment or dramatization. She did not ask for punishment. She asked only for fairness. And in doing so, she highlighted the contrast between her own professionalism and his moment of uncontrolled rage. Outside the formal proceedings, Marcus observed her in the training field. She continued to excel, silently leading her peers through exercises with an ease that made him feel both admiration and unease. She was patient with struggling teammates, precise in her movements, and unshakably calm in the face of physical exhaustion and environmental hazards. Marcus began to notice small details, the way she corrected a man's grip on a rifle, the subtle adjustments she made to form during a hand-to-hand drill, the quiet encouragement in her gaze. She was teaching without words, and he was learning without wanting to. By midweek, the investigation had reached a critical point. Commanding officers reviewed the events, considering disciplinary action, the morale of the unit, and the potential fallout of punishing a female SEAL trainee unfairly. Marcus was aware that any misstep could end his career. He walked the corridors in silence, avoiding eye contact with trainees and colleagues, feeling the weight of judgment in every glance. Alyssa moved past him each day with measured precision, never acknowledging his presence, yet her composure spoke volumes. She did not need confrontation. She commanded respect simply by existing. Late one evening, Marcus sat alone, reading more of her service record. The stories of her courage, her discipline, and her past achievements became almost unbearable in their intensity. He realized that his moment of aggression, his strike across her jaw, had been an act of cowardice, not in the sense of fear, but in the sense of failing to recognize true strength when it stood before him. Alyssa Grant was not a rookie in need of instruction. She was a veteran warrior in need of acknowledgement, and he had chosen the wrong method to assert control. The week ended with a tense tribunal. Commanding officers and internal affairs representatives convened to review testimonies, reports, and witness statements. Marcus sat rigid, every muscle coiled, every nerve alert. Alyssa entered calmly, composed, her presence alone commanding attention. She spoke clearly, directly, without hesitation or emotion. She presented facts, not feelings, and in doing so, she reframed the narrative. Marcus felt a surge of conflicting emotions, guilt, shame, awe, and a reluctant admiration he could not yet name. When the proceedings concluded, Marcus was left with a lingering sense of unease. He had expected confrontation, resistance, perhaps even fear. Instead, he had witnessed mastery, composure, and moral authority. Alyssa Grant had not only survived his strike, she had turned it into a lesson in professionalism, courage, and discipline, a lesson he was only beginning to understand. That night, Marcus walked the training field alone. The moonlight glinted off the sand, casting long, sharp shadows. In the distance, Alyssa practiced silently, executing maneuvers with fluid precision. Marcus stopped and watched, the weight of the week pressing down on him. He could not deny it any longer. She was extraordinary. He had struck a warrior and found himself humbled in ways he had never anticipated. The true measure of her strength was only beginning to reveal itself. And somewhere deep inside, Marcus knew that this was far from over. The strike across the jaw was not the end. It was the beginning of a reckoning, one that would test every assumption he had ever made about courage, leadership, and the limits of human endurance. Alyssa Grant was no longer a trainee. She was a force he would have to reckon with, whether he was ready or not. The emergency alert ripped through Coronado Base at 03:00 hours, the shrill siren echoing across the sand and concrete like a death knell. Intelligence reports had come in. A U.S. research vessel, the Horizon Sentinel, had been hijacked off the coast of Somalia. Hostages were in immediate danger. The Navy needed the SEAL team, the best, the fiercest, the unflinching, and despite the lingering tension between them, both Alyssa Grant and Marcus Holley were reinstated. Orders left no room for hesitation. Failure would mean lives lost. Marcus met Alyssa at the briefing room. The tension between them was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. He wanted to scold her, to assert authority, to reclaim some sense of control, but he didn't. The moment their eyes met, he saw the same calm intensity he had witnessed during Hell Week. She was focused, prepared, and unafraid. He swallowed a bitter thought. She did not need his permission to succeed. The helicopter ride to the operational zone was tense. Marcus studied Alyssa in silence, noting every detail. The way she checked her weapon, adjusted her gear, scanned the horizon. Every motion precise, disciplined, purposeful. The rest of the team whispered among themselves, aware of the history between the two, aware that they were about to witness not just a mission, but a collision of skill, pride, and raw courage. The insertion point was treacherous. The helicopter hovered over jagged cliffs, rotors chopping violently, a scent of salt and fuel mixing in the air. As the team rappelled onto the ship's deck, gunfire erupted from the hijackers. Marcus hesitated, just for a heartbeat, and that's when it happened. Alyssa pushed him down, her hands steady, dragging him behind a steel crate as bullets ripped past. He looked up at her, breathless in disbelief. "I've got you," she said, almost casually. Her calmness defied the chaos, her eyes cold with focus. The mission was a blur of calculated chaos. Alyssa led the team through narrow corridors, clearing rooms with lethal precision. She neutralized threats swiftly and efficiently, her every movement fluid and decisive. Marcus tried to regain control, to issue orders. But she had already anticipated the challenges he hadn't. Hostages were freed one by one, and each step forward showcased her ability to command under pressure, a skill Marcus had long thought was solely his domain. When the team reached the central hold, Marcus misjudged the trajectory of a hijacker wielding a rifle. He froze, hand trembling over his weapon. Alyssa reacted instantly, intercepting him, knocking him to the floor, and disarming the threat in a blur of motion. Her voice cut through the chaos. "Move, Lieutenant!" She propelled him behind cover and continued her advance, securing the hostages while Marcus watched, stunned, helpless to intervene. Minutes felt like hours. By the time the last hostage was cleared, and the team exfiltrated onto the helicopter, Marcus was exhausted, shaken, and humbled. He had witnessed in real time what he had long feared to admit. Alyssa Grant was beyond anything he had trained for, beyond anything he had expected. She was fearless, precise, commanding, and she had just saved his life. During the flight back to base, Marcus remained silent, grappling with a storm of conflicting emotions. He had always defined leadership as authority, dominance, and control. But Alyssa had demonstrated something entirely different. True leadership was courage tempered with intelligence, skill, and unwavering composure. She did not dominate through fear. She commanded through respect, action, and undeniable competence. Marcus could only sit in the corner, breathing heavily, aware that he had been wrong from the very beginning. The debriefing back at the base was formal, but the truth was unmistakable. Alyssa's performance had saved lives, completed the mission flawlessly, and rendered Marcus's previous authority almost irrelevant. In front of the team and commanding officers, the reality of her skill was undeniable. Colleagues who had doubted her now regarded her with awe, whispering stories of her composure under fire, her strategic mind, and her courage that rivaled any veteran male SEAL. Marcus, still recovering his composure, attempted to speak. "You saved my life out there," he said, voice strained. He struggled for words, seeking a way to assert authority, to reclaim control, but the recognition he owed her could not be disguised. Alyssa met his gaze, calm and unreadable. "We all have our missions, Lieutenant. Yours is to learn from them." It was a subtle rebuke, a reminder that he had been humbled, yet it was delivered without anger, without malice. Marcus felt a wave of shame, coupled with an unfamiliar sense of admiration. He realized that this was more than a personal lesson. It was a lesson in leadership, resilience, and the true meaning of courage. He had struck a warrior, and she had not only endured, she had excelled beyond anything he could have imagined. The aftermath of the mission rippled through the Navy. Reports praised Alyssa's heroism, detailing her composure, initiative, and bravery. Marcus's own role, while still necessary, was overshadowed by her decisive actions. For the first time in his career, he was forced to confront the reality that rank and experience could not replace skill, judgment, and courage under fire. Alyssa had redefined the standard, and he could not ignore it. That night, Marcus sat alone in the barracks, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the mission. The way she moved, the way she assessed threats before anyone else could see them, the way she neutralized danger without hesitation. It was more than training. It was instinct, discipline, and unyielding resolve in its purest form. Marcus realized that striking her during training had been not only a personal failure, but a profound underestimation of what a Navy SEAL could truly be. Alyssa, meanwhile, returned to her own quarters with quiet satisfaction. The mission had tested her skills in ways drills never could. Every action, every decision, had been executed flawlessly. She knew the eyes of the Navy were on her now. That praise would be whispered, written, and dissected. But she felt no need for validation. Her mission had been clear, her focus unwavering, and she had emerged unshaken. Marcus knew that nothing would ever be the same. The dynamics between them had shifted irrevocably. He had seen her at her absolute peak, witnessed the unflinching courage that could save lives in the blink of an eye. And in that realization lay both fear and respect, a recognition that authority was not about rank or muscle. It was about skill, judgment, and the ability to act decisively under pressure. For Marcus Hall, the mission had been a lesson, and Alyssa Grant had been the teacher. The Navy would debrief, the commendations would be filed, and the history books would record a successful operation. But for those two, for the moment they shared in the chaos of bullets, screams, and fire, the lesson was personal, profound, and unforgettable. Alyssa had demonstrated in a single operation what months of training and authority had failed to teach. She was unstoppable, unflinching, and beyond measure. By the time they returned to Coronado Base, the sun was just cresting the horizon. Trainees and instructors alike were abuzz with stories of bravery, of precision, of courage that surpassed expectation. Marcus watched Alyssa move among the team, guiding, instructing, and supporting, all without ego, all without fanfare. He felt the full weight of what he had witnessed. He had underestimated a warrior, and she had outshone everyone, including him. And in that moment, Marcus Halley understood a truth he could not escape. He had struck a Navy SEAL, and she had not only survived, she had saved his life. The reckoning had begun. The conference room was cold, sterile, and suffocating, a stark contrast to the chaos of the previous mission. Marcus Halley sat at the long table, hands clenched, jaw tight. The panel of senior officers, internal affairs representatives, and legal advisors eyed him with measured intensity. The events aboard the Horizon Sentinel had been recorded, documented, and dissected, and now Marcus was being asked to account for both his actions during Hell Week and his role in the Somali operation. He could feel the weight of the Navy's expectations, judgment, and disappointment pressing down on him like an impossible load. Across the table, Alyssa Grant sat calmly, her posture perfect, her hands folded neatly on the table in front of her. She radiated composure and discipline, an unshakable presence in the midst of scrutiny. She had been asked to testify regarding the jaw strike incident during training, the mission itself, and Marcus's actions. Her testimony would be factual, precise, and unflinching, and she would make it clear that, while Marcus had erred, she bore no malice, only the truth. The hearing began with a recitation of the facts. Marcus listened as the events were laid out: the strike, the injury, the investigation, and the mission. Every detail was meticulously catalogued, every witness statement examined. Marcus's chest tightened with each mention of his misstep. He had expected confrontation, but he hadn't anticipated the depth of his own shame. He realized that no explanation would erase what he had done. Only accountability could provide a path forward. When Alyssa was called to speak, the room fell silent. She stood, her uniform impeccable, her eyes calm and steady. "During training, Lieutenant Halle struck me without justification," she began, her voice measured, unwavering. "While the action was unacceptable, I continued my duties and completed the training. During Operation Silent Wave, I acted in accordance with protocol and training, ensuring the safety of all personnel and hostages. Lieutenant Hale's actions did not impede mission success, but they highlight the importance of leadership, discipline, and professionalism in all circumstances." Her words were precise, factual, and void of emotion, beyond the natural authority of a seasoned warrior. Marcus could feel the weight of every syllable. She had framed the incident not as personal vengeance, but as a lesson in integrity and responsibility. The room shifted subtly. Officers exchanged glances, nodding, impressed by her composure. Marcus's heart sank. She had not asked for punishment. She had not vilified him. She had simply upheld the truth. Marcus swallowed hard and spoke, voice low and deliberate. "I struck a soldier who was 10 times braver than me," he admitted. "I allowed frustration and pride to override my judgment. My actions were inexcusable. I accept full responsibility and any consequences deemed appropriate." His words felt hollow to him, yet he knew they were necessary. Admitting fault had never come easily to Marcus Halle, but he understood that leadership was not about pride. It was about accountability. The board deliberated for hours. Marcus sat, silent, reflecting on the events of the past weeks. He replayed the mission, the drills, the strike, and every moment with Alyssa. He recognized the depth of her skill, the unwavering precision of her actions, and the profound calm with which she carried herself. He realized that his initial assumptions, that she was a political experiment, a novelty, or an anomaly, had been entirely wrong. Alyssa Grant was a warrior, a leader, and a force beyond his understanding. Finally, the board returned. Marcus was demoted 1 rank, stripped of certain privileges, but not dishonored. Alyssa had recommended leniency, emphasizing professionalism and accountability over punitive action. Marcus felt a mix of relief, shame, and gratitude. He had been humbled, disciplined, and educated all in one moment. The truth was undeniable. Alyssa had redefined what it meant to lead, to endure, and to embody the SEAL ethos. Outside the conference room, Marcus caught sight of Alyssa walking calmly down the corridor. Her jaw had healed, her composure intact. She acknowledged him with a subtle nod. No words, no fanfare, but the gesture carried weight. Marcus understood. She had forgiven, not for him, but for the integrity of the team and the mission. He felt a deep, reluctant respect welling up inside him, an emotion he had long resisted acknowledging. In the following weeks, Alyssa resumed her training and operational duties. She guided new trainees with precision, teaching not through authority, but through example. Marcus observed quietly, noting the subtle ways she corrected errors, offered guidance, and inspired the team. He realized that leadership was not about rank or intimidation. It was about influence, courage, and the ability to act decisively under pressure. Alyssa embodied all of these qualities effortlessly. Marcus began to reflect on his own leadership style. He had relied on authority, on fear, on control. Alyssa had demonstrated that true leadership required something far greater: the ability to inspire, to endure, and to act with unwavering integrity. He began to adjust his approach, listening more, observing more, and allowing the lessons she had taught, through both her training and her composure, to reshape his methods. Late one night, Marcus approached her quietly in the barracks. She looked up, alert but calm. "I want to thank you," he said, his voice low and sincere, "for saving lives, for teaching me a lesson I should have learned long ago." Alyssa regarded him silently for a moment. "The lesson was always yours to learn, Lieutenant," she replied quietly. "I only acted according to what was necessary. Leadership is proven in action, not words." Marcus nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. For the first time, he felt humility, not as weakness, but as acknowledgement of her strength. The recognition was profound and unsettling. Alyssa had not sought to dominate, humiliate, or punish him. She had only acted with skill, discipline, and unwavering professionalism. In the days that followed, Marcus noticed subtle changes in the unit. Trainees began to emulate Alyssa's approach, calm, precise, and disciplined. He saw the respect she commanded, not through fear, but through action. He began to realize that she was not merely a trainee or a peer. She was a standard, a benchmark for excellence that would endure long after this mission, long after the investigation. The base began to adjust to her presence, not as an anomaly, but as a leader. Marcus Hall, once rigid in his traditions and assumptions, began to embrace the lesson fully. True strength was not measured by rank, by brute force, or by authority, but by integrity, courage, and the ability to act decisively under pressure. Alyssa Grant had taught him, in the most unforgiving of ways, what it meant to be a real Navy SEAL. The incident, the mission, the investigation, it had all led to one undeniable truth. Alyssa Grant had faced the impossible, endured it, and emerged not just unbroken, but stronger, wiser, and more capable than anyone around her. Marcus Hawley, once proud, now humbled, could only watch and learn, recognizing that the true measure of leadership was not in domination, but in respect earned, courage demonstrated, and lives saved. By the end of the week, Marcus felt a quiet transformation within himself. The shadow of pride and arrogance that had defined him for years had been stripped away. In its place was something new: awareness, humility, and respect. And standing before him, calm, disciplined, and unshakable, was Alyssa Grant, the embodiment of what it truly meant to be a Navy SEAL. The morning air over Coronado Base carried a sharp chill, a crispness that seemed to match the anticipation building across the training grounds. Today was not just another day of exercises or endurance drills. Today marked a milestone that few ever reached. The ceremony to earn the SEAL Trident was imminent, a symbol of completion, mastery, and entry into the elite ranks of the Navy's most formidable warriors. Alyssa Grant, who had survived every test, endured every trial, and proven her extraordinary skill in combat, would finally claim the insignia she had earned in blood, sweat, and discipline. Marcus Howell watched from the sidelines, heart heavy with a mixture of pride and lingering guilt. He had witnessed her journey from the moment she stepped onto the base, from the first day of grueling Hell Week, through the jaw strike incident, to the life-or-death precision of Operation Silent Wave. Every step of the way had been a lesson in courage, resilience, and leadership. Today, she would be recognized not just for her endurance, but for her indomitable spirit. The ceremony began with a formal procession of trainees and instructors. The air was charged with solemnity and respect. Each SEAL candidate approached the podium to receive the trident, the symbol of their place among the elite few. When Alyssa's name was called, the crowd fell silent. She stepped forward with measured grace, her uniform impeccable, her posture unwavering. Every eye followed her, every gaze marked by admiration and awe. She did not seek attention, she simply embodied it. Marcus felt a lump rise in his throat. Here was a woman who had faced bullets, exhaustion, and the judgment of a skeptical world. Yet she carried herself with unmatched poise. The trident was placed in her hands, a gleaming symbol of achievement. As she pinned it to her chest, the significance of the moment was unmistakable. She had earned every ounce of respect, every nod of recognition, and every whisper of awe that now surrounded her. For Marcus, the ceremony was more than symbolic. It was a reckoning. He had underestimated her from the beginning, dismissed her potential, and in a moment of frustration, struck her. Today, he had no choice but to confront the truth. She had not only survived his aggression, but had surpassed him in skill, leadership, and composure. He swallowed hard, letting humility replace pride for the first time in years. As the ceremony continued, Elisa took her place among the new SEALs, standing with the calm authority that had defined her journey. Colleagues and instructors approached to offer congratulations, many of them visibly moved by her resilience. Each handshake, each nod of approval, was a recognition not only of her skill, but of her unwavering professionalism in the face of adversity. Marcus watched silently, noting how she inspired respect without a single word or demand. Later, during the debriefing and post-ceremony reflection, Marcus finally approached her privately. He hesitated, the weight of past mistakes pressing down on him before speaking. "Elisa," he began, voice low, deliberate, "I underestimated you from the start. I misjudged your strength, your discipline, everything. Today, seeing you earn your trident, I realize how wrong I was. You're not just a warrior. You're a leader, a standard we should all aspire to." Elisa regarded him calmly, eyes steady, expression unreadable. "Thank you, Lieutenant," she said quietly. "Recognition is not the goal. Completing the mission, protecting lives, and maintaining integrity, that is what matters. You've learned a valuable lesson in leadership. I hope you carry it forward." Marcus nodded, swallowing hard. The words stung with truth, yet they carried the clarity he needed. Elisa had not sought to humiliate him. She had simply acted according to the principles she lived by. And in doing so, she had taught him more about courage, responsibility, and true leadership than any drill, mission, or lecture ever could. The days following the ceremony were filled with operational exercises, each more demanding than the last. Elisa continued to lead quietly, her influence evident in every trainee's improved performance. Marcus observed her, learning to step back, to follow, to allow her expertise to guide the team. He realized that leadership was not about dominance or ego, but about recognizing the strengths of those around you and empowering them to act decisively. Elisa had exemplified this principle in every action, and Marcus finally understood its profound impact. Public recognition came soon after. The Navy issued commendations, highlighting Elisa's extraordinary performance during training and her decisive actions in Operation Silent Wave. Articles circulated, praising her bravery, composure, and leadership. She remained humble, focusing on the work rather than the accolades. Her reputation spread quickly, inspiring new recruits and seasoned SEALs alike. She had become a symbol of excellence, a benchmark for the Navy, and a testament to the power of skill, discipline, and unwavering courage. Marcus, reflecting on the journey from Hell Week to the Trident ceremony, felt a profound transformation within himself. He had been humbled, challenged, and ultimately educated by Elisa's example. He realized that true leadership was earned, not demanded, demonstrated, not asserted. And he knew, with certainty, that his respect for her was not temporary. It was permanent, forged in the fires of training, combat, and personal reckoning. The final exercise of the week brought the team to a rugged coastal cliff, where trainees were tested on navigation, survival, and tactical coordination. Elisa moved with her characteristic precision, guiding her peers, assessing threats, and maintaining a calm authority that left Marcus in awe. He observed quietly, aware that he had witnessed a level of mastery few could ever achieve. Her influence was tangible. The team's cohesion, focus, and efficiency reflected her guidance, not his. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Marcus walked alongside Alyssa on the beach. The wind carried the scent of salt and the distant roar of the ocean. He spoke quietly, almost reverently. "You've changed everything I thought I knew about leadership, courage, and skill. I can't thank you enough." Alyssa's gaze met his, steady and unwavering. "You don't need to thank me, Lieutenant. The work, the mission, the team, that is enough. Recognition is fleeting. The results endure." Marcus nodded, understanding finally what she meant. The trident, the commendations, the public recognition, these were symbols. But the true measure of her achievement was her ability to lead, protect, and inspire others. Alyssa had not sought glory. She had sought excellence. And in doing so, she had redefined what it meant to be a SEAL. As the team gathered for one final debrief, Marcus felt a deep sense of closure. The challenges, the tension, and the conflict had shaped him, molded him into a more aware, humble, and effective leader. And at the center of it all stood Alyssa Grant, calm, disciplined, and extraordinary, a true embodiment of courage, skill, and leadership. The sun set over Coronado Base, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Alyssa stood tall, her trident gleaming in the fading light. Marcus watched silently, a mixture of awe and respect washing over him. He knew that this moment, this recognition, was not just for her. It was a lesson for all who had witnessed her journey. And in that lesson lay the ultimate truth. Greatness is not measured by authority, rank, or ego, but by courage, discipline, and the unwavering commitment to protect, lead, and endure. Alyssa Grant had proven it, and Marcus Hawley, once skeptical and prideful, had finally understood it fully. The sun rose slowly over Coronado Base, spilling golden light across the sand, the ocean, and the steel-gray buildings. A sense of calm lingered in the air, a quiet contrast to the chaos and tension of the past weeks. For most, it was just another day of training, drills, and preparation. But for Alyssa Grant, it marked a different kind of milestone, a moment of reflection on what had been accomplished, endured, and transformed. She walked along the edge of the training field, her boots crunching softly against the sand. Every step carried the weight of countless hours of practice, every motion a testament to discipline honed under fire and extreme conditions. She carried no sense of ego, no need for recognition. The trident pinned to her chest was more than a symbol of achievement. It was a reminder of responsibility, resilience, and the unyielding standards she had set for herself and those around her. Marcus Hawley approached, quiet but purposeful. He had spent the previous weeks reflecting on his own actions, processing the lessons he had been forced to learn. The jaw strike incident, the mission in Somalia, and the subsequent ceremonies had humbled him in ways he could never have imagined. For the first time in decades, he viewed leadership not as a function of rank or authority, but as a manifestation of courage, discipline, and moral integrity. "You've changed the way I see everything," Marcus said quietly, keeping his gaze on the horizon. "Not just leadership, but skill, commitment, even how to face fear. You've taught me more than I could have imagined, Alyssa." Alyssa looked at him, calm and steady. "Leadership is earned through action, Lieutenant. It's demonstrated in the moments that matter, not demanded through authority or intimidation. You've learned the lesson, and now it's up to you to carry it forward." Her words were simple, yet they carried the weight of experience, wisdom, and unwavering professionalism. In the following days, the base settled into a rhythm of training and preparation. New trainees arrived, unaware of the extraordinary events that had unfolded just weeks earlier. Elisa moved among them quietly, guiding, instructing, and correcting with subtle precision. She did not command through fear or insistence. She led by example, and her presence alone inspired confidence, respect, and determination. Marcus observed closely, internalizing her methods and reflecting on his own approach. He began mentoring younger officers differently, allowing lessons of observation, empathy, and humility to guide his leadership style. The Navy recognized Elisa formally, issuing commendations for her heroism during Operation Silent Wave, her endurance in SEAL training, and her exemplary leadership. Her story spread quietly through the ranks, inspiring new generations of SEAL candidates. She became a benchmark, not because she was exceptional for being a woman, but because she was exceptional, period. Her skill, courage, and composure transcended labels and expectations. She had become a symbol of what it truly meant to embody the SEAL ethos: courage, resilience, integrity, and action under pressure. Marcus felt a profound shift within himself. He no longer saw Elisa as a rival, a challenge, or a threat. He saw her as a teacher, a standard, and an embodiment of the qualities he had long sought to master. His pride had been stripped away, replaced with respect, humility, and a renewed understanding of what leadership demanded. He understood that true authority was not claimed. It was earned and demonstrated through action, decisiveness, and integrity. The months that followed brought new missions, rigorous training exercises, and high-pressure simulations. Elisa continued to excel, consistently leading with precision and calm authority. Marcus found himself following her guidance without hesitation, trusting her judgment, and learning from her actions in ways that no lecture or directive could teach. Their relationship evolved, no longer defined by conflict, ego, or authority, but by mutual respect, trust, and shared purpose. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and crimson, Marcus and Elisa walked along the beach. The ocean's gentle roar provided a soothing backdrop to the weighty reflections of the day. Marcus spoke first, his voice subdued but earnest. "I've spent my career believing leadership was about command and control. You've shown me it's about courage, integrity, and action. I can't thank you enough for teaching me what I needed to learn, even if it was the hard way." Elisa regarded him with quiet composure. "The lessons are never easy, Lieutenant. Growth rarely comes without challenge. But what matters is not the lesson itself, but how you carry it forward. Leadership is about others, not ourselves." Her words resonated deeply with Marcus, imprinting a truth he would carry for the rest of his life. In the following months, Elisa's influence spread beyond the training grounds. Her methods, her calm authority, and her resilience became the foundation of new protocols for trainee development. She advocated for discipline, paired with respect, courage paired with strategic thinking, and action paired with moral integrity. Her leadership reshaped the culture of the unit, elevating standards and inspiring excellence. Marcus, once rigid and prideful, embraced his role as a student of her example. He observed, learned, and applied the principles Elisa had demonstrated, mentoring younger officers with humility, patience, and clarity. He no longer relied solely on authority or fear to maintain order. He inspired respect through competence, insight, and accountability. The lessons he had resisted were now internalized, shaping him into a more effective and compassionate leader. Years later, Elisa's name became synonymous with excellence within the SEAL community. Her story was recounted, not as a tale of novelty or gender, but as an enduring example of courage, skill, and unwavering professionalism. Every trainee who walked through Coronado Base learned of her feats, not merely her successes. but the way she carried herself under pressure, the way she acted decisively and ethically, and the way she inspired those around her. Her legacy was built not on accolades, but on respect earned through action. Marcus often reflected on the journey they had shared. From the first day of Hell Week to the jaw strike incident, through Operation Silent Wave and the Trident ceremony, he had been humbled, challenged, and ultimately transformed. He had learned that true leadership was not about dominance, ego, or authority. It was about courage, integrity, and action. And Alyssa Grant had taught him that lesson in the most undeniable way possible. Standing on the beach one final time, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Marcus felt a sense of closure. The past conflicts, the tensions, and the challenges had all led to this moment of understanding and mutual respect. Alyssa walked beside him, calm, disciplined, and unshakable, a living testament to everything a Navy SEAL could aspire to be. "Whatever comes next," Marcus said quietly, "I'll remember the lessons you've taught me." Alyssa glanced at him, her expression steady. "Then you've learned well. Leadership is a lifelong mission. Never forget that." As the waves lapped against the shore, both knew that their journey had changed them forever. Alyssa's path was one of continued excellence, quiet leadership, and unwavering courage. Marcus's path was one of humility, growth, and deep respect for the true measure of a warrior. Together, their story became a testament, not just to survival or skill, but to the power of discipline, courage, and integrity. The sun disappeared beyond the horizon, leaving a sky painted with twilight. In the quiet aftermath of trials, combat, and reckoning, one truth remained clear. Alyssa Grant had earned her place among legends. And in doing so, she had transformed everyone around her, teaching that true greatness is demonstrated not through authority or aggression, but through courage, resilience, and unwavering action in the face of adversity. And Marcus Hall, once proud and rigid, now humbled and enlightened, would carry that lesson with him for the rest of his life.